Dostoevsky stood before a firing squad at 27 years old, blindfolded, waiting for bullets. The Tsar had condemned him to death for reading banned books, and at the last second, a messenger arrived. Reprieve. It was a staged execution, psychological torture. Most men would call this cruelty. Dostoevsky called it awakening, because for the first time he saw life not as a path to somewhere else, but as this, just this, right here, the absurd gift of another breath. And he spent the rest of his life trying to tell us something we keep refusing to hear. You are already standing before the firing squad. Your death is already certain, and you're wasting your one wild existence planning for a future that's eating your present alive. Dostoevsky's warning isn't about God or morality. It's about waking up before the messenger stops coming. Now, I want you to really feel what that moment must have been like for him. Picture it. You're standing there, hands bound, a cloth over your eyes. You can hear the soldiers loading their rifles, the click of metal, the shuffle of boots in the snow. Your heart is pounding so hard you think it might burst before the bullets even reach you. And in that moment, what matters? Does your career matter? Does your status matter? Do your grudges, your plans, your carefully curated identity matter? No. What matters is breath. The cold air on your face, the fact that you're here, conscious, alive. Everything else becomes paper thin. And then reprieve. You're not going to die. Not today. The blindfold comes off and the world floods back in. Colors are brighter. Sounds are sharper. You notice things you've walked past 1,000 times as if you're seeing them for the first time. This is what Dostoevsky experienced. And here's what haunts me about his story. Within weeks, maybe months, that clarity began to fade. The preciousness of existence started to feel normal again. The miraculous fact of being alive became mundane. And he spent the rest of his life writing novels, trying to capture that firing squad clarity, trying to wake people up without making them face actual death. Because here's the thing, you and I, we're living as if we have forever. As if there's always going to be time later to do the thing, say the thing, be the person we know we could be. We're postponing our lives. And Dostoevsky is screaming at us from the 19th century. There is no later. There's only this, and you're missing it because you're too busy preparing for a moment that never comes. So why does this matter right now, today, for you? Let me tell you what's really happening. You're exhausted by the self-optimization industrial complex. Every podcast tells you to be more disciplined. Every book promises a better system. Every guru sells you a morning routine. And yet, you're more anxious, more fragmented, more hollow than ever. The pain isn't that you're failing at self-improvement. The pain is that you're succeeding at becoming someone you don't recognize. Someone who performs life rather than lives it. We've been sold a myth. The myth says that consciousness equals control. That if you just understand yourself deeply enough, track your habits precisely enough, optimize your inputs perfectly enough, you'll finally feel whole. But Dostoevsky saw through this 150 years ago. He watched the Western world fall in love with rationalism, progress, scientific materialism, the belief that humans are perfectible machines. And he screamed from the pages of his novels, "You're not a machine, and treating yourself like one is making you insane." Think about your life right now. How much of your day is spent monitoring yourself, tracking your steps, your calories, your screen time, your productivity, your mood, your water intake, your sleep cycles. You've turned yourself into a science experiment. And the hypothesis is always the same. If I can just control enough variables, I'll finally be okay. But you won't. Because the problem isn't that you're not controlled enough. The problem is that you've confused control with living. This video isn't going to teach you how to be better. It's going to teach you how to stop abandoning yourself in pursuit of better. We're going to explore Dostoevsky's most dangerous idea, that suffering isn't a bug in the human system, it's a feature. That your contradictions aren't problems to solve, they're the texture of being alive. That freedom isn't found in perfect choices, but in embracing the irreducible mess of being human. And here's the reframe that changes everything. Common advice says, find your purpose, optimize your life, become your best self. Dostoevsky says, you don't have a purpose, you are purpose. You don't need to become anything. You need to stop pretending you're not already whole. The relief isn't in finally getting it right. The relief is in realizing there's no it to get. But so we live in Dostoevsky's nightmare, a world of infinite content and zero presence, endless connection and terminal loneliness, total freedom and paralytic anxiety. His warning wasn't for 19th century Russia. It was for you right now, scrolling at 2 a.m., wondering why nothing feels real anymore. And what you're going to walk away with today isn't a system, not a solution, but a permission slip to be irrational, to contradict yourself, to feel without fixing, to exist without earning it. By the end of this, you won't have more answers. You'll have less need for them. So let me tell you about a man who met the devil. Not metaphorically, literally, in his own living room. Or at least that's what Dostoevsky claimed. In The Brothers Karamazov, he tells a story within a story. And it's one of the most disturbing, beautiful, relevant pieces of literature ever written. It's called The Grand Inquisitor. And it's about you. Here's how it goes. Christ returns to earth, not in some distant future, but during the Spanish Inquisition, one of the darkest periods of human history. And he does exactly what he did before. He heals the sick. He raises a little girl from the dead. He walks among the people with infinite compassion. And the people recognize him immediately. They fall to their knees. They weep. They reach out to touch him. It's happening again. The miracle, the love, the redemption. And then the Grand Inquisitor appears. He's an old man, 90 years old, the highest authority in the church. And he watches Christ perform these miracles. He sees the people's joy. And do you know what he does? He has Christ arrested immediately, thrown into a dungeon, because he knows Christ's return is a threat, not to God, to the system. That night, the Grand Inquisitor visits Christ in his cell, and he delivers a monologue that should be required reading for every human being. He says essentially, you came here once before with your grand gift of freedom. You told people they could choose. You refused to turn stones into bread when Satan tempted you in the desert. You refused to prove yourself by throwing yourself off the temple. You refused to rule over all the kingdoms of the earth. You chose freedom, and you wanted humans to choose it too. But we, the church, we fixed your mistake. The Inquisitor continues. You see, you gave humanity something they didn't want and couldn't handle. Freedom, choice, responsibility. But what people actually need is bread, security, someone to tell them what to do. So we took your message and we changed it. We gave them miracles when they needed wonder. We gave them mystery when they needed meaning. We gave them authority when they needed direction. And they love us for it. They're happy now. They don't have to choose. They don't have to think. They don't have to carry the unbearable burden of their own freedom. Now here's where this gets personal. So the Grand Inquisitor isn't just a character in a novel. He's the voice in your head right now. He's the part of you that's listening to this video, desperately hoping I'll give you the answer. The system, the routine, the formula. Just tell me what to do. Give me the steps. Make it simple. Let me surrender my freedom because freedom is too heavy. And I see this everywhere. You scroll productivity content at midnight, not because you want to be productive, but because you want someone to tell you how to live so you don't have to figure it out yourself. You buy courses and programs and blueprints, not for the information. You have more information than you could use in 10 lifetimes, but for the relief of having someone else make your decisions for you. You want a guru to play the role of the Grand Inquisitor to say, here's the morning routine, here's the diet, here's who you should be. Now you don't have to think anymore. And there's no judgment in this. I understand it. Freedom is terrifying. To wake up every day and have to decide from nothing who you're going to be, what matters, what to do with the precious hours you have, it's exhausting. It's easier to find a system and follow it. It's easier to find an identity and perform it. It's easier to let the algorithm decide what you watch, what you buy, what you believe. Because then if your life doesn't work out, you can say, well, I follow the plan. It's not my fault, but Dostoevsky saw what we're still refusing to see. When you trade freedom for certainty, you don't just give up choice. You give up yourself. You become what the Grand Inquisitor wanted, a well-fed, comfortable, obedient creature who's forgotten what it means to be human. And the tragedy is, you'll defend your cage. You'll say, but I'm happy. I'm productive. I'm doing well. And you are by every metric except the one that matters. You're not alive. You're managed. Now here's the twist in the story that breaks everything open. After the Grand Inquisitor finishes his long, devastating monologue, after he's explained why Christ was wrong, why humanity needed to be enslaved for its own good, why freedom is a curse, Christ says nothing. Not a word. He's been silent the entire time. And then he simply walks up to the old man and kisses him softly on his aged lips. And then he leaves. The door is unlocked. He could have stayed, could have argued, could have performed a miracle, but instead, a kiss and departure. What does this mean? I've thought about this for years. That kiss. It's not approval. It's not agreement. It's recognition. Christ is saying, I see you. I see your fear. I see why you did what you did. I see that you think you're protecting people, and I love you anyway, but I won't stop offering freedom just because it terrifies you. And the door being unlocked, that's the detail that destroys me, because it means Christ was never imprisoned. He could have left at any time. He stayed for the conversation. He stayed to let the Inquisitor say his piece, because freedom means letting people choose, even when they choose cages, even when they choose systems and certainty and the comfort of being told what to do. So now I'm going to ask you something uncomfortable. What's your Grand Inquisitor? What system, what person, what ideology have you surrendered your freedom to? Who are you letting make your choices because it's easier than making them yourself? Is it your political tribe telling you what to think? Is it the productivity guru telling you how to spend every minute? Is it your parents' expectations telling you who to be? Is it the algorithm telling you what to consume? Is it your company telling you what to value? Is it your own past self? Some decision you made 10 years ago that you're still living out like a prison sentence? And here's the thing. Maybe you need that structure right now. Maybe you're not ready for total freedom. And that's okay. The point isn't that all structure is bad. The point is, are you choosing your structure, or is your structure choosing you? Because a monk takes vows, severe constraint, absolute surrender, but it's chosen. It's conscious. That's not imprisonment. That's devotion. But if you're following a system you don't remember choosing, performing an identity you don't remember becoming, living a life you don't remember designing, then you're in the Inquisitor's dungeon and the door is unlocked. It always has been. Let me tell you about another man, another character from Dostoevsky's mind. This one's from Notes from Underground, and he's called appropriately the Underground Man. And he's the most painfully modern character you'll ever meet, even though he was written in 1864. Because he's you. He's me. He's everyone I know. Imagine a man so intelligent, so self-aware, so conscious that he can't act. He wants to love, but he sees through his own motives. He wants to rebel, but he understands the futility. He wants to simply be, but he's trapped in infinite layers of self-observation. He describes it as a disease. He actually calls consciousness a disease. And the more I live, the more I think he was on to something. Picture yourself watching yourself live. There's you experiencing something. And then there's you watching you experience it. And then there's you watching you watch you. It's mirrors all the way down. The underground man sees other people act spontaneously. They get angry. They just get angry. They fall in love. They just fall in love. They make decisions. They just make decisions. And he envies them desperately. Not because they're happier, but because they're real. You know this feeling. I know you do. You're at dinner with friends, and suddenly you're not actually there. You're watching yourself be there. You're thinking, am I laughing enough? Am I talking too much? Do I seem interested? Am I being authentic? And the moment you think that, am I being authentic? You've already lost it. Because authentic people don't monitor their authenticity. They just are. Or you're in an argument with someone you love, and you're arguing. But you're also watching yourself argue. And you're analyzing why you're arguing. And judging yourself for how you're arguing. And then getting mad that you're analyzing instead of just feeling. And then feeling bad that you're mad at yourself. It's turtles all the way down. You can't just be angry anymore. You have to be aware of being angry, which means you're not really angry. You're performing anger for your own internal audience. The underground man discovers something absolutely horrifying. Self-knowledge doesn't free you. It paralyzes you. The more you understand your motives, the less genuine any action feels. You want to express love, but then you notice it's partially selfish. You want something back. You want to be generous, but you catch the ego gratification, the subtle pride. You want to be authentic, but you're aware that wanting to be authentic is itself a performance, a way of being seen a certain way. Every spiritual tradition tells you, know thyself, but what if knowing yourself is exactly what's killing your ability to live? What if consciousness, past a certain point, becomes a prison? The underground man lies in bed for days, thinking in circles, unable to act because every action he considers immediately reveals itself as tainted, partial, motivated by something other than what he wants it to be motivated by. And here's what breaks my heart. You're doing this right now. You're listening to me, but you're also watching yourself listen. You're agreeing with some things, disagreeing with others, but you're also monitoring your own reactions. Are you learning enough? Are you being open-minded? Critical enough? You're not just here. You're here watching yourself be here. This is what Dostoevsky meant by hyperconsciousness, and he calls it a disease, a genuine, absolute disease. Not because ignorance is better. Animals aren't suffering from overthinking, but they're also not capable of love, art, meaning. But there's supposed to be a third option. Not unconscious action like an animal. Not paralyzed awareness like the modern human. But something else. Conscious spontaneity. Acting fully while being fully aware. Living from center. The Zen people call this no mind. It's when you're so present that the observer disappears. Have you ever experienced this? Maybe in sports, in art, in sex, in deep conversation. Those moments where you forget to watch yourself and you just are. That's it. That's the escape from the underground. But here's the problem. You can't think your way into no mind. You can't be aware of your way out of over-awareness. The tool that got you into the trap can't get you out. This is why every solution you try becomes a new cage. You discover meditation, and immediately it becomes another thing to perfect, another metric to track. You go to therapy, and it becomes another layer of self-observation, more narratives about yourself to monitor. You try to simplify, and simplicity becomes another identity to maintain, another way to be good at life. The underground man realizes, and this is the cruelest part, that he can't even be sure his suffering is real, because he's aware of his suffering, which means part of him is enjoying it, performing it, using it. He says something like, I'm convinced that every man who's overconscious enjoys his suffering. There's a pleasure in it, because at least you're feeling something. At least you're interesting to yourself. Do you see what he's getting at? You can't even trust your own pain anymore. Are you really depressed? Or are you performing depression? Are you really anxious, or have you made anxiety part of your identity? Are you really seeking help, or are you seeking validation for your narrative about yourself? And once you ask these questions, you've fallen deeper into the trap, because now you're analyzing your analysis. Now you're conscious of your consciousness. It never ends. So, what's the way out? Dostoevsky doesn't give easy answers, but he hints at something. The underground man is alone, totally alone. He has no real connections, no love, no ground. And Dostoevsky seems to suggest that the way out of overconsciousness isn't through more thinking, it's through connection. It's through letting yourself be seen, really seen by another person. Because when you're truly intimate with someone, you can't maintain the observer position. You're pulled into presence. You're pulled into being. But that's terrifying. Because being seen means you can't control your image anymore. You can't curate, can't edit, can't perform. You're just there, exposed, human. And for someone who lives in their head, that's like dying. But maybe it's the only way to live. I want you to think about this. When's the last time you did something without watching yourself do it? When's the last time you felt something without immediately trying to understand it, name it, fix it, share it? When's the last time you were just present, just here, without the narrator? Your mind is both the labyrinth and the Minotaur. You're lost in it, and you're what you're running from. Stop mapping the maze. Stop trying to think your way out. The exit appears when you stop looking for it. When you finally give up trying to understand yourself and just let yourself be. Now, let's talk about what Dostoevsky forces us to see once we stop trying to escape ourselves. Let's talk about the truths he put on the page that make us uncomfortable because they're too accurate. These aren't lessons in the sense of do this and your life will improve. These are more like revelations, things you've always known but have been afraid to admit. First truth, suffering is not optional, but how you relate to it is. Every modern philosophy, every self-help system, every optimization framework promises you the same thing. A life without suffering if you just do it right. Right mindset, right habits, right boundaries, right morning routine. And you've bought into this. You think there's a version of life, maybe just around the corner, where you finally won't hurt anymore. Where you won't feel anxious or sad or lonely or disappointed. You think suffering means you're doing it wrong. But Dostoevsky says you've already lost by accepting that premise. Suffering isn't a bug in the human system. It's how consciousness experiences depth. It's how you know you're alive and paying attention. The question isn't, how do I avoid suffering? The question is, what am I doing with mine? Because you're going to suffer. That's guaranteed. Your parents will die. Your relationships will end or change or disappoint you. Your body will age and fail. You will lose things you love. You will want things you can't have. This is the price of consciousness. But here's the reframe. You're not broken because you suffer. You suffer because you're alive and paying attention. The people who don't suffer aren't enlightened. They're numb. They've made themselves so shallow that nothing can hurt them, which also means nothing can touch them. They're walking around, but they're not alive. They're protected, but they're dead. Dostoevsky's characters suffer intensely. Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment suffers so deeply he almost loses his mind. The Karamazov brothers suffer through doubt, lust, rage, grief. Prince Mishkin in The Idiot suffers through his own goodness in a corrupt world. And yet, they're more alive than everyone around them precisely because of their suffering. They're feeling at depths other people can't access because other people have armored themselves against feeling. Now here's where we've gone wrong. We've weaponized suffering. We've turned it into pathology. Every uncomfortable emotion is labeled toxic or trauma and must be eliminated. Got anxiety? That's a disorder. Got sadness? That's depression. Got anger? That's toxicity. And yes, sometimes these things need treatment. I am not anti-therapy or anti-medication. But what if we've lost the ability to distinguish between suffering that's meaningful and suffering that's destructive? What if your grief is just love with nowhere to go? What if your anxiety is just care pointing at something real, something you actually should be paying attention to? What if your depression isn't always a chemical imbalance, but sometimes an intelligent response to living inauthentically? What if your anger isn't toxicity, but a boundary trying to be born? Dostoevsky would look at our therapy culture and say, you're not healing. You're gentrifying your inner life. You're trying to optimize suffering away instead of learning what it's trying to teach you. You're treating symptoms instead of listening to messages. And the more you try to eliminate suffering, the more you create, because suffering resisted becomes suffering amplified. It's like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes constant effort, constant vigilance. All your energy goes into keeping it down. And the moment you relax, boom, it explodes upward. You can't fight sadness out of yourself. You can't think anxiety away. You have to meet it, acknowledge it, sometimes even thank it. Try this. Next time you're suffering, really suffering, not just inconvenience, but actually in pain, don't fix it. Don't analyze it. Don't even name it. Just sit with it, like you'd sit with a crying child. Not to make it stop crying, but to let it know it's not alone. Just be with your pain. Don't try to make it mean something or learn from it or turn it into growth. Just be with it. Dostoevsky's characters do this constantly. They sit with their anguish. They don't run from it or spiritually bypass it. And something happens, not always, not immediately, but the suffering transforms, not into happiness, into something deeper. Presence, reality, the raw, unfiltered texture of being alive. Here's the paradox, the people most desperate to eliminate suffering create the most because they're at war with themselves. They're rejecting huge parts of their own experience. They're saying, this sadness isn't allowed. This fear isn't acceptable. This anger is toxic. And every time you reject a part of yourself, it gets louder. It has to, because it's trying to be heard. But when you turn toward your suffering, when you say, okay, I see you, I'm here, what are you trying to tell me? Something shifts, not because you fixed anything, but because you've stopped being at war with yourself. You've stopped treating your pain as an enemy and started treating it as a messenger. And messengers, once heard, often leave. This doesn't mean you wallow. It doesn't mean you make suffering your identity or reject treatment when you need it. But for the everyday suffering of being human, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the existential loneliness, the fear, the grief, try meeting it before medicating it. You might be surprised what it has to say. Second truth, your contradictions are your humanity. You contain multitudes. You want solitude and connection. You crave freedom and security. You're generous and selfish, brave and afraid, rational and absurd, all at once, sometimes in the same hour. Modern psychology calls this cognitive dissonance and treats it like a problem to solve. Dostoevsky calls it being human and treats it like the only interesting thing about you. Every Dostoevsky character is a walking contradiction. Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment murders an old woman to prove he's beyond morality, then immediately gives his last coins to a suffering family. Why? Because he's not one thing. He's multiple, conflicting, contradictory. The underground man claims he wants isolation, then obsesses over social approval. Prince Mishkin is saintly and naive, wise and foolish. These aren't complex characters, they're accurate characters, because you're like this too. Think about your own life. You say you want to be present, then plan your entire life 5 years out. You claim you value authenticity, then perform a curated self online. You believe in minimalism, then scroll for hours consuming content about consuming less. You want to be spontaneous, but you schedule spontaneity. You want to let go, but you track your progress on letting go. You're not a hypocrite. You're a human being trying to hold paradoxes that don't resolve. And the pressure to be consistent is everywhere. Personal branding culture demands it. Pick your niche. Stay on message. Be coherent. The algorithm can't handle nuance. It needs you to be one thing so it can categorize you, predict you, sell to you. But you're not one thing. And every time you betray your complexity to fit a narrative, you lose a piece of your soul. I watch people do this constantly. They choose a political identity, and suddenly they have to agree with everything in that tribe and disagree with everything in the other. They can't say, I agree with this but not that, because that's inconsistent. They choose a wellness identity, vegan or paleo or whatever, and suddenly they can't admit they sometimes crave what they've forbidden. They choose a professional identity and can't admit they're uncertain or interested in something else, because that's not their brand. But what if you stop trying to resolve your contradictions? What if the goal isn't to become a coherent, perfected self, but to become spacious enough to hold all yourselves without collapsing? This is what Dostoevsky's characters teach. They don't grow in the traditional character arc sense. They expand. They become big enough to contain their own paradoxes without breaking. You don't need to choose between being spiritual and ambitious, between self-care and service, between boundaries and openness, between discipline and spontaneity. You need to stop believing that maturity means eliminating contradiction. It doesn't. Maturity means getting comfortable hosting a dinner party in your psyche where every version of you gets a seat at the table. Because here's what happens when you try to eliminate your contradictions. You eliminate yourself. You become a thin, one-dimensional character, predictable, manageable, boring. You know those people who've done the work and become completely smooth, completely consistent, completely optimized. They're terrifying. Not because they're bad people, but because they're not quite people anymore. They're brands. They're functions. They've edited out everything human. Dostoevsky would rather you be a mess, a beautiful, contradictory, sometimes hypocritical, fully human mess. Because at least you're real, at least you're interesting, at least you're alive. Third truth, rationality is a beautiful cage. Now this one's going to upset people because we've been trained to worship reason. We think rationality is what separates us from animals, what makes us civilized, what solves problems. And it does all those things. But Dostoevsky saw that it also kills something essential. Notes from Underground opens with the underground man declaring war on reason itself. He says, and this should shock you, what does reason know? Reason only knows what it has managed to learn, but human nature acts as a whole, with everything that is in it, consciously or unconsciously, and even if it goes wrong, it lives. Translation. You've been taught that the rational choice is the right choice. That if you just gather enough data, optimize enough variables, think through enough scenarios, you'll make the perfect decision. But rationality is just a slice of human experience. It's one tool in the toolkit. And when you let that tool dominate, when you try to live entirely by reason, you starve the rest of yourself. Look at your life. You make pro and con lists for your relationship. You calculate ROI on your friendships. You track metrics on your mental health. You measure your productivity. You optimize your routines, and somehow the more rational you become, the less alive you feel. Because life isn't happening in the spreadsheet. Life is happening in the irrational leap, the unexplainable attraction, the this makes no sense but feels completely right moment, the intuition you can't justify, the love that isn't logical. Dostoevsky gives the most beautiful, infuriating example. He asks, What if man's advantage consists in his being able to act against his own advantage? Read that again. What if the most human thing you can do is choose something irrational, something unprofitable, something that defies optimization, just to prove you're not a function, not a formula, not a machine? This is why you self-sabotage. And I'm not talking about genuine self-destruction. I'm talking about the ways you mysteriously undermine your own carefully laid plans. You're on a perfect diet, then you eat the cake. You're being perfectly productive, then you waste the afternoon. You're maintaining perfect boundaries, then you break them. Not because you're broken, but because some part of you refuses to be predictable. When your life becomes too systematic, too optimized, too rational, something in you rebels, not out of pathology, out of a fierce commitment to your own humanity. It's like your soul saying, I will not be reduced to an algorithm. I will not be a function someone can predict. I am more than the sum of my optimized parts. Now, I'm not saying be reckless. I'm not saying ignore reason entirely. But what if you gave yourself permission to make one decision this week based purely on what feels right with zero rational justification? Not destructively, but courageously. What would that be? What's the thing you'd do if you trusted the part of yourself that knows things reason can't touch? Maybe it's reaching out to someone even though it doesn't make sense to. Maybe it's changing direction on something even though you've invested so much. Maybe it's saying yes to something that terrifies you. Maybe it's saying no to something everyone expects you to do. The rational mind will have 100 objections. Let it object. Then do the thing anyway, because Dostoevsky believed, and I believe, that one irrational act of genuine feeling is worth more than a lifetime of calculated correctness. The rational life is safe, but safety isn't the point. Living is the point. And living means sometimes choosing the path that makes no sense on paper, but makes perfect sense in your bones. Fourth truth, you cannot love humanity without loving humans. In the Brothers Karamazov, there's a character who confesses something devastating. I love humanity, but I wonder at myself. The more I love humanity in general, the less I love man in particular. In my dreams, I am very often passionately determined to serve humanity, and I might quite likely have sacrificed my life for my fellow creatures if for some reason it had been suddenly demanded of me. Yet I am incapable of living in the same room with anyone even for 2 days. This is us. This is the modern condition. We post about compassion while being impatient with our family. We care deeply about the marginalized while dismissing our co-workers' struggles. We're saving the world on social media while not answering our friends' text. Not because we're fake, because abstract love is easy. Specific love is terrifying. Humanity in general doesn't disappoint you. Humanity in general doesn't have bad breath or annoying habits, or need things at inconvenient times. Humanity in general never shows up at the wrong moment with the wrong problem. You can love humanity from a distance. You can love ideas about people. You can feel very noble about your concern for people you'll never meet. But your actual brother, your actual neighbor, your actual partner, they're messy. They're needy. They're irrational. They interrupt your plans. They don't fit your theories. They demand something ideas never do: presence, time, patience, the willingness to be inconvenienced. And that's so much harder than caring about humanity. Dostoevsky suggests something radical. Love isn't a feeling. It's a burden you choose to carry. Not burden as in suffering, but burden as in weight, substance, reality. When you love abstractly, you love your idea of people. Perfect, grateful, distant. When you love specifically, you love people despite your ideas about them. You love them in their actual irritating existence. We've perfected the art of loving everyone while being intimate with no one. We're connected to thousands online and lonely in our living rooms. We sign petitions and share posts and feel very engaged, and we're absolutely alone. Because none of that requires actual relationship. None of that requires you to show up when it's boring, to listen when you'd rather talk, to be there when you'd rather be somewhere else. Causes don't ask you to compromise. Causes don't need you when you're tired. Causes let you feel virtuous without the actual cost of love. But that guy at work who's going through a divorce, he needs you to have coffee with him, even though you're busy. That friend who's depressed, she needs you to sit with her, even though you can't fix it. That family member who drives you crazy, they need your presence, not your judgment. This is the test Dostoevsky gives us. If your love for humanity doesn't translate into patient presence with the human in front of you, it's not love. It's narcissism wearing a halo. It's ego disguised as care. And it costs you nothing, which means it's worth nothing. So who in your actual life needs your presence right now? Not your advice, not your solutions, not your thoughts and prayers, your time, your attention, your willingness to be inconvenienced. That's love. And it's terrifying because you can't control it. You can't curate it. You can't make it look good online. It's just you and another messy human being messy together. Fifth truth, and this is the big one. Freedom is terrifying, and that's why we keep choosing chains. This is Dostoevsky's nuclear bomb. This is the idea that explodes everything. Humans don't want freedom. We say we do. We fight for it, protest for it, romanticize it. But when we actually get it, we panic and build new prisons. Why? Because freedom means responsibility. And responsibility means you can't blame anyone else for your life anymore. If you're free, then your choices matter. Then your life is your doing. Then if it doesn't work out, you chose that. And that's unbearable. The underground man is given total freedom. No job, no obligations, no social ties. He could do anything, be anything, go anywhere. And what does he do? He becomes paralyzed, bitter, obsessed with petty resentments. He writes his notes from his underground room, raging at the world, because freedom without structure isn't liberation. It's vertigo. It's staring into the void and realizing the void is staring back through you. You know this feeling. You finally leave the toxic job. Then panic about what to do with your freedom. You end the suffocating relationship. Then immediately start dating someone equally limiting. You clear your schedule, then fill it with busy work. Not because you love being busy, because emptiness is unbearable. Because having to decide from nothing who you are and what matters, that's terrifying. Remember the Grand Inquisitor? He tells Christ, nothing is more seductive for man than his freedom of conscience, but nothing is a greater cause of suffering. We want someone to tell us what to think, who to be, how to live, because then if it goes wrong, it's their fault. We're off the hook. We tried. We followed the plan. It's not on us. And look at the modern chains we choose. The algorithm that tells you what to watch. You're not oppressed by it. You're comforted by it. It eliminates the burden of choice. The influencer who tells you how to live, you're not a victim. You're a volunteer. They give you certainty, the political tribe that tells you what to think. You don't have to figure out your own position on every issue. You just have to know which team you're on. The productivity system that tells you how to spend every minute. No more existential dread about wasting time. Just follow the system. We're not oppressed by these things. We're comforted by them. They give us what the Grand Inquisitor promised, bread and certainty in exchange for freedom. And we take the deal eagerly because the alternative, true freedom, true responsibility, is too much. But here's where it gets beautiful. Here's where Dostoevsky shows his full wisdom. He also suggests that choosing chains can be sacred if you're aware you're choosing them. A monk takes vows, severe vows, obedience, poverty, chastity, total constraint, but it's chosen consciously. That's not imprisonment. That's devotion. You commit to a relationship. You're giving up the freedom to be with anyone else. But if you choose it consciously, in full awareness, that limitation becomes depth, becomes love. The chains aren't the problem. The problem is pretending you're not wearing them, or blaming someone else for putting them on you. The problem is living like a victim when you're actually the author. So here's the question that changes everything. What would you do if you truly accepted that you're free? Not if you had more money or if circumstances were different. Right now, you're free. The job you hate, you're choosing to stay. The relationship that drains you, you're choosing it. The content you consume, you're choosing to scroll. The city you live in, you're choosing not to move. The life you're living, you're choosing it. This isn't blame. This is power. Because if you're choosing your chains, you can also choose to take them off. But then, and this is the terror, you'd have to face what's underneath. Who you are when nothing is required of you. What you want when no one is telling you what to want. What matters when you strip away all the shoulds and supposed tos. Dostoevsky knew this is the real terror. Not that we're in prison, but that we're the ones holding the keys and we're too afraid to turn them. Because once that door opens, we can't pretend anymore. We can't blame anymore. We have to live. And living, truly living, in full freedom and full responsibility, that's the most frightening thing in the world. All right, so we've gone deep into the philosophy, into the contradictions, into the discomfort of what Dostoevsky saw about human nature. But this can't just live in your head. These ideas have to change how you actually move through the world. So let me give you some practices, not in a 5 steps to success way, not in an optimization way, but in a how do you actually embody this kind of way. First practice, the daily contradiction exercise. Once a day, catch yourself in a contradiction. And you're human. You'll want 2 opposite things. You'll be 2 opposite ways. Instead of trying to fix it or resolve it or figure out which one is really you, just acknowledge it. Say it out loud or write it down. I am both this and that. For example, I am both craving connection and needing solitude. I am both confident in my work and completely uncertain. I am both wanting to help people and wanting to be left alone. I am both grateful for what I have and hungry for more. Here's why this matters. You've been trained to resolve contradictions. Pick a side. Be consistent. Choose. But this practice builds the muscle of contradiction. Tolerance. You're teaching yourself that you can hold 2 truths without breaking. That you don't need to become coherent to become whole. After you name the contradiction, notice what happens. Notice the relief. Something relaxes when you stop trying to be one thing. That relaxation, that's your authentic self. It's been holding its breath, waiting for permission to be multiple, fluid, contradictory, to be real. At first, this will feel weird. Your mind will want to explain it away, justify it, resolve it. Well, I crave connection because of this, but I need solitude because of that. So really, I'm just stop. Let the contradictions stand. Both things are true. You contain multitudes. Let yourself be big enough to hold them. Over time, you'll find yourself becoming more spacious, less brittle, more able to meet the complexity of other people because you've met the complexity in yourself. You'll stop needing everyone else to be simple and consistent because you've given yourself permission to be neither. Second practice, the irrational act. Once a week, do something that makes no rational sense but feels deeply right. Not reckless, not harmful, but unexplainable. Buy flowers for no reason. Take a different route home for no reason. Start a conversation you've been avoiding. Write a letter you'll never send. Or make art that serves no purpose. Take a walk with no destination. The point is, you're practicing trusting the parts of you that know things reason can't access. You're deliberately choosing something that doesn't optimize, doesn't produce, doesn't advance any goal. You're proving to yourself that you're not a function. Remember Dostoevsky's insistence that humans will choose against their own advantage just to prove they're free? This is that. You're not being strategic, you're being alive. You're not making the smart choice, you're making the human choice. Every time you choose irrationally but consciously, you're breaking the algorithm's hold on you. The algorithm expects you to be predictable. Click this, buy that, feel this way. Your irrational act is a glitch in the matrix, a moment where you're genuinely unpredictable because you're genuinely free. But, and this is important, this isn't about being impulsive or chaotic. It's about honoring the intelligence of your non-rational self. That part that knows you should call your grandmother, not because it's on your schedule, but because something in you needs to hear her voice. That part that knows you should cancel your plans and just sit in the park, even though you should be productive. Trust that. It knows things your rational mind doesn't. Third practice, conscious suffering. Next time you're suffering, sad, anxious, angry, lonely, whatever, don't immediately try to fix it. Don't reach for your phone. Don't distract yourself. Don't problem solve. Just sit with it for 5 minutes. Set a timer if you need to. 5 minutes of just being with whatever you're feeling and literally ask it, what are you trying to tell me? Not as a therapy technique, not as a way to understand it, but as genuine inquiry. Then listen. Not for words necessarily, but for sensation, for image, for knowing. This is hard because you've been taught that negative emotions are emergencies. Sad? Here's a self-care routine. Anxious? Here's a breathing exercise. Angry? Here's a journal prompt. And those things can help. But they can also be ways to avoid actually feeling. Dostoevsky knew that suffering often contains information. Your depression might be grief for a life you're not living. Your anxiety might be excitement you're not letting yourself feel. Your anger might be a boundary you're not setting. But you can't receive the message if you're drowning it out with solutions. Most suffering changes when witnessed, not because you've fixed anything, but because you've stopped being at war with yourself. You've stopped treating your pain as an enemy and started treating it as a messenger. And messengers, once heard, often leave. This isn't wallowing. It's not glorifying pain or rejecting help. If you need therapy, get therapy. If you need medication, take medication. But for the everyday suffering of being human, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the existential loneliness, try meeting it before medicating it. Sit with it. Listen to it. You might be surprised. Fourth practice, specific love. Choose one person in your actual life, not a cause, not humanity, not an abstraction, and show up for them this week in a way that costs you something. Time, inconvenience, vulnerability. Not a text, not a like, not sending good vibes, actual presence. Call the friend you've been meaning to call. Visit the family member you've been avoiding. Have the difficult conversation. Be physically present with someone who needs you, even if it's awkward, even if you don't know what to say, especially if you don't know what to say. This practice trains you to love the way Dostoevsky meant it, not as sentiment, but as action, not as feeling, but as choice, not as convenience, but as commitment. Abstract love is easy and meaningless. Specific love is hard and real. You'll have resistance. You're too busy. They probably don't want to hear from you. It'll be uncomfortable. It won't make a difference. All of which might be true. None of which matter. Because this isn't about fixing anything. It's about choosing connection over comfort. And you'll learn something crucial. You can love imperfectly. You can show up awkwardly, and it still matters. Presence is more powerful than perfection. One moment of genuine connection, messy, uncomfortable, vulnerable, is worth more than 1,000 beautifully curated performances of care. Fifth practice, the freedom inventory. Make a list. 3 areas where you've given away your freedom, where you're blaming circumstances, other people, or how things are for your choices. Be honest. Brutally honest. Maybe it's like, I stay in this job because I need the money. Really? Or are you afraid to try something else? I can't set boundaries because they need me. Really? Or do you need to be needed? I have to scroll because there's nothing else to do. Really? Now rewrite each one. I am choosing to. Notice how the energy shifts. I am choosing to stay in this job because I value security more than I value fulfillment right now. That's not judgment. That's power. You're no longer a victim. You're the author. This will feel terrible at first because blame feels better than responsibility. Blame means you're off the hook. Responsibility means you have agency, which means you have accountability. But here's the gift. If you're responsible for your chains, you're also capable of removing them. Choose one thing from your list. Not to change it necessarily, but to consciously choose it. Say out loud, I am choosing this. If you can say it with peace, keep the choice. It's yours, owned, conscious. But if you can't say it without your soul screaming, well, now you know what needs to change. The moment you accept your freedom, really accept it, is the moment you stop being a character in someone else's story and become the author of your own. It's terrifying. It's lonely. It's the only thing worth doing. These practices aren't about self-improvement. They're about self-recovery. You're not trying to become someone new. You're trying to remember who you were before the world taught you to perform, optimize, and disappear. Dostoevsky's gift is reminding us that we don't need fixing. We need remembering. So here we are at the end of this journey through Dostoevsky's warning. And if you've stayed with me this whole time, you know by now this wasn't really about a 19th century Russian novelist. It was about you. about the parts of you that have been waiting for permission to be contradictory, irrational, messy, and real. When we started, maybe you came here looking for answers, a system, a solution, a way to finally get life right. But Dostoevsky doesn't offer that. He offers something more dangerous and more freeing. The recognition that you're already whole, even in your brokenness, especially in your brokenness. That your suffering isn't a mistake. Your contradictions aren't problems. Your inability to be consistently optimized isn't a failure. It's proof you're still human. You've been at war with yourself, trying to eliminate the messy parts, the irrational parts, the parts that don't fit the personal brand or the success narrative or the optimized life. And that war is exhausting. You're tired. I know you are. You're tired of tracking yourself, monitoring yourself, improving yourself. You're tired of being a project. Dostoevsky's warning, his gift, is this: you can lay down your weapons. You don't have to become coherent. You don't have to resolve. You just have to be spacious enough to hold it all. The sadness and the joy, the certainty and the doubt, the generosity and the selfishness, the light and the shadow. All of it. Because all of it is you. So here's what I want you to remember. Here's what I want you to come back to when you're drowning in optimization culture and productivity porn and the endless pressure to be better. You are not a problem requiring a solution. You are a mystery worthy of presence, not understanding. Presence, not fixing. Presence, just the willingness to be here as you are, contradictory and irrational and beautifully, impossibly alive. The world will keep selling you cages, systems, routines, identities, tribes, all promising that if you just follow the formula, you'll finally feel whole. But wholeness isn't on the other side of perfection. It's on the other side of acceptance. Accepting that you're free, accepting that you're responsible, accepting that you're going to suffer. And that's not evidence you're doing it wrong. That's evidence you're doing it at all. Dostoevsky spent his life writing about people who couldn't escape themselves. And in that inability, they found something transcendent. Because the way out isn't out. The way out is through. Through the suffering, through the contradiction, through the terrifying freedom of being responsible for your own existence. That's not a path to happiness. Happiness is overrated anyway. That's a path to being real. And being real, it turns out, is what you've been hungry for all along. Not success, not achievement, not optimization, realness, presence, the feeling of being alive in your own skin, in your own life, in your own contradictory, messy, glorious existence. You stood before the firing squad the day you were born. Your death sentence was issued the moment you took your first breath. And you've been given this absurd, precious gift: time, consciousness, the ability to love and suffer and create and choose. And you're wasting it. You're wasting it on self-improvement projects and optimization systems and the endless postponement of living. Dostoevsky saw this in the 1800s. He saw people sleepwalking through life, waiting for permission to exist, treating themselves like machines to be perfected. And he wrote novels like Prophecies, warning us, wake up. Wake up before it's too late. Wake up before the messenger stops coming. So wake up. Right now, this moment, you're alive, you're here, you're breathing. That's the miracle. Not that you've accomplished things or optimized things or become the right person, just that you're here at all. And that's enough. You're enough. Not because you've earned it or achieved it, or improved your way into worthiness. Just because you're here, you're not broken. You've just been misled. You've been told that consciousness means control, that maturity means consistency, that wholeness means elimination of contradictions. You've been sold a vision of life as a problem to solve, a system to perfect, a self to optimize, and it's killing you slowly. The optimization is killing you. The self-improvement is killing you. The endless monitoring and tracking and improving is killing the very thing it claims to be helping, your life. So stop. Just stop. Not forever, not completely, but just for a moment. Stop trying to get it right. Stop trying to be consistent. Stop trying to resolve your contradictions or eliminate your suffering or perfect your existence. Just be. Be messy. Be contradictory. Be irrational. Be human. And if this resonated with you, if something here gave you permission to be more fully yourself, I'd love to know. Leave a comment sharing which idea hit you hardest. Not for me, but so the other people watching know they're not alone in this. So they know that other people are struggling with the same war, the same exhaustion, the same hunger for something real. Because that's what we're really doing here. We're not just watching videos or consuming content. We're trying to find each other. Trying to find people who understand that the optimized life isn't living, that the curated self isn't real, that the perfected existence is a prison. We're trying to find permission to be human in a world that wants us to be functions. And if you want more of this, more philosophy that doesn't lecture but liberates, more explorations into what it means to be human in a world that's forgotten, consider subscribing. Not because I need your subscription, but because you might need the reminder that it's okay to be contradictory. It's okay to be irrational. It's okay to suffer. It's okay to be free. It's okay to be human. You're not broken. You've just been misled. And now you're remembering. You're remembering what Dostoevsky knew, what he tried to tell us, what he screamed from the pages of his novels. You don't need to become anything. You don't need to resolve anything. You don't need to perfect anything. You just need to be here, really here, fully here, in all your messy, contradictory, irrational, suffering, joyful humanity. That's the warning. That's the gift. That's what Dostoevsky spent his life trying to give us. And it's yours now. You can take it or leave it. You can go back to optimizing and improving and perfecting. Or you can lay down your weapons and just be. The choice, as always, is yours. And it always has been. Welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to your contradictions. Welcome back to your freedom. Welcome back to your life. The real one. The one that's happening right now. While you've been waiting for it to start. It's already started. It started the day you were born. And it's happening right now. Don't miss it.